Good morning, you gorgeous, gorgeous people. I woke up this morning and decided to choose violence in an already overwhelming moment of life, I guess, if you will. I've chosen to finally pull the trigger. Am I allowed to say that on here? I don't really know because I don't know the rules yet, because this is my first video I've ever made specifically for YouTube, with the intentions of it being only on YouTube for just me and my people. So anyway, what sparked this random desire? What sparked this random moment of waking up and just saying, go all in? Well, a conversation that I had last night with somebody. That is exactly why I'm making this video, because it really just inspired me. And I started to make a TikTok, and I was like, you know what? This deserves more than 10 minutes. This is much longer. This deserves a much bigger conversation. So that's exactly why we're here. Now, if you have no idea who I am, and you just randomly popped on this channel somehow, I'm very sorry for that. But let me give you a little bit of a 2-minute background. Set a timer on the clock, please. My name is Rachel. I am a criminal defense lawyer in Tampa, Florida. However, I do be practicing all over the state. And the reason behind that is my clients are in prison. My clients have all been either accused, they've all been accused. Half of us have been accused. But they've all been found guilty, pled guilty, or pled no contest because it was in their best interest to do so. But either way, shape, or form, they have found themselves in prison for a significant period of time, because if they're not serving like at least 15 years, it's just not worth the money or the time that I'm going to put in for them. So my goal is to get them out of prison and make sure their rights were not violated. Now, that does not mean that I'm just out here getting guilty people out. I've been called like a guilty, what is it? A criminal releaser. A criminal releaser. I'm not a criminal defense lawyer. I'm a criminal releaser. Jailbreaker, if you will. This is not prison break. No. These people are actually individuals who, number one, could be very much innocent. Number two, they could have been over-sentenced. That's another story. But anyway, I digress. My job is very exciting. It's very interesting. I've been doing this for 12 years. I have my own law firm. I worked previously for another firm for 10 years. Started my own firm 2.5 years ago, and here we are. I've gotten dozens of people out of prison, dozens of success stories, tears, but way more negative stories, if I'm being honest. Way more losses than wins. We hold on to those wins with every ounce of our being. It's as if I don't know, I'm hanging off of the side of the cliff for dear life. I'm not even joking you, because those keep me alive and above ground. So, 36 years old, divorced, in a relationship, sister, mom, dad. I'm just kidding, that sounds crazy, but my life is a little bit wild. But the purpose of this channel is obviously not about that. Maybe it will kind of veer that way at some point, but probably not. It's more about legal shit. I know I'm wearing a tank top, but it's hot in my office right now. I'm not sure why. So let's take a deep breath before we get back to the real reason you're here is why. Why? What sparked my interest? What sparked my interest? If you just happen to guess that someone associated with another person who shall not be named slid in my DMs yesterday, and then a lovely conversation ensued. I'm not going to say their name. I'm not going to say what we spoke about. But at the end of that conversation, there was one question that was asked of me. I want to make sure that I get this completely right. So let me read it word for word. Okay, so this actually happened over the course of several messages, so there's going to be a little bit choppy, but the general gist of it was this. The first suggestion, or the first statement made was, I just believe that everybody can heal and be rehabilitated in one way or another. That was like kind of like the first remark, and then we kind of sent a couple of audios back and forth. But the final takeaway was like, I would assume in your job, keyword there, assume. I would assume because of your job that you would be a proponent or a fan or somebody that would want people to be rehabilitated. And first thought, my first response was honestly, I got a little defensive, because I was like, first of all, don't gaslight me. Don't make it seem like I'm the problem, that I cannot be open to somebody being rehabilitated, because baby girl, I am the biggest cheerleader. You might as well have me fucking spelling out rehabilitation on a daily basis to people. I'm constantly arguing that. I'm constantly saying that to everyone. Anyway, so that really pissed me off, because don't you dare call my career and my understanding of shit into question, because I've had personal dealings with somebody that I know cannot be rehabilitated. But anyway, so what this started sparking this conversation between us, I was like, you know what? maybe I'm just fucked up. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this person can be rehabilitated. Maybe I am too close to it. I go, maybe I'm too subjective. I'm not being objective enough. I go, let's take a step back and let's educate ourselves. So that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna educate ourselves on the types of things to look for that can be suggestive or factors to consider if someone's been rehabilitated or not, if they're capable of being rehabilitated. And although every human is different, everything is situational, whether or not it's possible that somebody cannot be rehabilitated, okay? I do think I need to make a little bit of a disclaimer. Number one, these are just my fucking opinions. None of this is facts, otherwise opinions. If I make a statement that could offend anybody, it's allegedly. And legal disclaimer, none of this is legal advice. You don't want to take legal advice from me because my clients are in prison. So I'm constantly saying that to people. If you ever ask for my phone number as a lawyer and you're like, oh, I can't, if I ever need you one day, I'm like, if you need me, your ass is so far gone. I promise you, no. Throw that card away. Unless you're sending it to your brother, cousin, mother, or sister in prison. So what is rehabilitation? Honestly, in terms of the criminal justice word, I could give you like the fancy schmancy definition. But the reality is it's just trying to help fix people. It's understanding the why. It's understanding how they got to where they were and fixing that how. Right? So let's just do, like, for an example. 90%, maybe 95% of the cases that I've seen in my entire career involve drugs and substances of some kind. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, that's impossible. People aren't doing drugs. They're not always doing drugs, right? Sometimes they are committing a crime to get drugs. Sometimes it is because of drugs that a crime occurs, and maybe they're just an innocent bystander. Sometimes they are self-medicating to cope with a mental health concern that they have not been diagnosed with and they're not medicated on. So those are kind of like some of the main things that we look for. So I'm constantly asking my clients when I first speak to them, tell me how you got here. Like, that's just such a general question, but it's something that I always ask because I want to know, because I want to be able to help them figure out, okay, if we get to the point where I can talk to the prosecutor on your case, how can I explain to them who you are, who you were before this case, who you've been in prison, and who you want to be when you get out? And the main way that we answer that question is showing them that you have recognized what happened, taken accountability for your part in it, and you have corrected the problem that brought you to that place. So that, in my opinion, is the best way to kind of describe somebody being rehabilitated. Now, because it's not the number one concern when somebody's getting sentenced, sometimes the options and we'll say the program to rehabilitation or the pathway is not as clear as you would think. So for example, I have clients that have a life sentence that at some point in time will get released. I've talked about my client June on my TikTok. He served 25 years in prison, and then within a moment's notice, he was released. Because he had a life sentence before when he was in prison, he didn't have the option or he didn't have access to the programs that other individuals who have earlier release dates do, because they never thought he would be given the opportunity to be a law-abiding citizen. And what's crazy is he has thrived in the last 3 years. Like, this kid has just blown everybody's minds, like, truly out of the water. They don't want you to be successful on probation, and he has literally become the #1 probationer, like, in the fucking state. It's insane. But the reason that is because he has a lot of support on the outside, and because he never really was a criminal. He was innocent the whole time. So he didn't really have something that needed to be fixed, if you think about it like that. And I'm not saying that everybody has something that they need to fix, but there is a reason. It could literally be, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Well, why were you there? Why were you there? And if you did commit a crime, why did you commit the crime? Some people, like arguably very, very infamous individuals who have become known as like serial killers and sociopaths, psychopaths, those people do not, in the opinion of professionals, don't have the ability to be rehabilitated because they will never feel remorse, they will never take accountability, and they can never stop this pattern that they have created. So that's kind of one of the things that I'm always looking for is a pattern, accountability, answering that question and the steps that somebody takes to make sure that they right the wrongs that they did, and they can then prevent themselves from doing more wrongs. And I'll be the first person to admit, I have a couple of clients that I have gotten them relief, which means that they either got their sentence reduced or they were released scot-free. I have 2 clients that have gone back to prison, and I have zero empathy for them. And I have told them that because I've told them that you were given a moment, you were given an opportunity that 99% of people around you would kill for, like would actually kill for, would risk going to prison for longer just to have that opportunity, and you shit on it, you just gave it away, you what's, and then I asked them, I go, what's the why? and go, you were not ready and you did not get the help that you needed, even though it's offered, right? So again, this conversation and the question of why I don't have the ability to recognize or want somebody to be rehabilitated is absolutely fucking insane. Because that is the main thing that I've always wanted and will always want. Because I ain't gonna lie, these people, these clients of mine, they are people, right? But I tell them all the time, I want you to be successful. That is a win for me. A win for them is a win for me. I want them to be rehabilitated. I want them to do well. I don't want crime to keep happening. That's insane. And I don't think that anybody that can say that with a good conscience, y'all need to be checked out. You need to go to therapy. Like, you need to be checked out if that's you. So obviously in this conversation with this person last night, I made the suggestion that the person we were speaking about was not in a position where I ever thought they could be rehabilitated. That's why this whole thing got started. And I think that's a really good question to ask is, are there people that can't be rehabilitated? And I think that the short answer is, it depends. I don't think there's any reliable way to say that somebody can never be rehabilitated, or there's not some like black and white correct answer that you can just get because you check off 5 things out of a checklist or a box of items. I think that that's a very subjective question that should be looked at. Well, it's just like, this is a case study. We're literally doing a case study together. Welcome to law school. This is your first day, but I have a lot of faith in you, and I'm going to walk you through it and hold your hand. So one of the most important things, in my opinion, for people that are seeking to kind of debate this topic is kind of figuring out what could be the ideal, perfect scenario or setting for somebody to be rehabilitated. And I think that's why it's hard to say that there are people out there that could never, because I think in the right set of circumstances, in the right positive atmosphere, the support, the training, the programs that are available to you, and that sort of right environment, set of circumstances, I think somebody could thrive. And they could always, if they have all the things, the mental, the physical, the support, I think that anything is possible, right? Like, that would be silly for me to sit here and suggest otherwise. That would actually just be insane, which I'm not most days. So yeah, as much as there's this obvious notion or understanding that any person in the right set of circumstances could change, there's also psychological and just human patterns that we see, especially in the criminal justice system, that reflect a certain set of kind of factors or elements to consider when you are trying to decide if somebody is in a position to be rehabilitated or if they have been rehabilitated. So obviously these factors can go either way. Like, I could sit here and say, number one, accountability. But that would be the same thing as me saying a lack of accountability for somebody that could be rehabilitated versus can't be rehabilitated. So let's just talk about it. Accountability. I like to think that I am the queen of accountability. I think that I take more accountability than I should, and I end up getting myself in a fuck ton of trouble. But if you're new to Earth, if this is your first day here, let me explain to you what accountability means. It means taking responsibility for your actions and your part in something. It's not gaslighting somebody. It's not saying but. It's not justifying it. It's not even giving a second or a flick, a small tiny speck of context. The person that you are taking accountability to don't need to hear all of that. That's not accountability. That's a justification. That's an excuse. That is a negative ding on your accountability chart. Like, you're getting points deducted for every time that you try to justify it. So people that can take accountability, normally the reason why they're doing that, they're taking that responsibility, is because they are working towards doing better in the future. You cannot do better until you take full accountability for what you've done. So let's just give a hypothetical, kind of relevant. Let's say that you have committed a slew of crimes, very similar to each other. Let's just say that let's just say you've hurt a lot of people, whether it was physically, emotionally, mentally, otherwise. Taking accountability for those actions would mean every single instance, not one, not two, not the first or the last or the biggest ones or the smallest ones or the ones that you think matter the most or the ones that you think you hurt the most. No, all of them. Every person. You have to take accountability for each one. That means not a single passing of blame to anybody else. That means you say, I did these things to you. I am recognizing my involvement, my responsibility. I am taking responsibility. I am taking accountability. I want to fix this. Until you do that, you have zero accountability taken on your part. It doesn't count. Like, that's like saying to a child, if a child in a kindergarten classroom goes around and hits 5 people, at the end of the day, the teacher calls his parents and they ask him to come in and they're like, little Johnny was hitting again. Little Johnny, that's a crime. Johnny, you need to apologize. And let's just say Johnny goes and only apologizes to 3 of the people. He has not taken accountability for all 5 that he hit. And the likelihood of that, without that accountability, is that it will happen again. You're welcome. I know that was a pretty good teacher moment right there. I'm pretty proud of myself. Because in a past life, that's what I wanted to be. Maybe still this life, I don't know. So what are like some other like, I don't want to say considerations, but some things that kind of show a lack of accountability or a lack of taking accountability? Number 1, blaming others for your things. This is such a fun little side note, and this is a good example, I think. If you have committed a crime, and let's say your friend could become a consequence, right? Like could become unfortunately involved because just the association. And that friend as a result goes and reports the crime to law enforcement. You're not allowed to blame them because you got caught. It's just like, it's like saying when somebody says, don't talk shit about me. Was I talking shit or were you just doing shitty things? That is blaming other people for your own actions. And that is a very, very big red flag in terms of an inability to take accountability. That's a lot of illities and bitties and la la la. It's itty bitty titty committee. Not here. Next thing, minimizing or denying that you harmed somebody. So trying to suggest that it was just this much. So let's say it's not a physical crime. Let's just say, I will be very candid right now. There are often times that I am doing this for my clients. I have a client, his name is Chris. He's one of my favorite clients. He is serving a life sentence for something that, in my opinion, is just so undeserving. No one was physically injured. However, when I say that out loud, I recognize that I am actually minimizing his responsibility and his involvement. Because there was a victim in this case who was mentally harmed by the fear that happened. That's a story for another day, and I will happily share it because I love that kid. I feel horrible for him. It's very, very unfortunate. He was a juvenile, by the way. So anyway, let's get back to the business. So that's a really good example of just, that's a lack of, when you start to blame other people, or you say that you minimize the harm that was done, you're very, very close to like, you can pretend that you're taking accountability, but you're absolutely not. You're not. Your excuses are speaking for themselves. Like, the minimizing of things is speaking for itself. I think one of the other big ones that I see all the time is when a client of mine who's actually sitting in prison, right? They try to suggest or flip the story so that they are the victim. The state of Florida, the prosecutor did this to me. My attorney did this to me. I didn't do this. I'm a victim in all of this. I have a client whose wife was tragically killed, right? And how dare they take a grieving husband and make him the number 1 suspect and ruin his ability to grieve in the way that he wants to. He is the victim. Or, unfortunately, this does happen in self-defense cases that are not actually self-defense cases. So a lot of times people will get into some sort of a situation, a little scuffle, if you will, and they'll be like, self-defense, stand your ground. Well, guess what? If it's a real self-defense case, then it will be very obvious that you were the victim. Hello, I'm probably Exhibit A, but if it wasn't actually self-defense, you doing that is actually just you deflecting and you are not taking any accountability whatsoever. So yeah, that's actually a big example as well. So all these things, right? The minimizing, the passing the blame to others, all those things, those all kind of come back to this. You have to have insight if you're going to be able to do any of that. You have to be able to look within and truly be honest with yourself and move from there. And if somebody can't do that, if they don't have the ability to recognize that, then they don't have the ability to be rehabilitated because there is no foundation for them to build on. They don't have anywhere to go. Like, there is no up from here. Like, they'll never get past low. Like, I was like, hell, hello. But it's true. If you cannot recognize where you need to climb to get out of this, you don't have the insight that you need or the tools necessary to rehabilitate yourself and to become somebody that is able to take accountability. The next big factor I think that I've seen and I think is reported in some way, shape, or form in forensic psychology is a lack of remorse or empathy for others. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm an empath. I could never relate to this if I wanted to. Something that's very, very important with this, though. As people get older, they do grow and mature in the way that they are able to understand others' emotions, right? So I have not always been as empathetic as I am now. As I've gotten older and the trauma that I experienced, it forced me to look into trying to put myself into other people's shoes. And as a result, my empathy just fucking just exploded inside of me, and I want to give it back. But I do know that I could be rehabilitated because I have so much empathy. I could just give you all a piece of it, and it'd be enough to, it would not be enough to go around, because it might be, there's a lot. But if you don't have the ability to do that, if you are younger, you might grow out of it. So, right, so it's not an immaturity. It's not a lack of understanding or a lack of ability to understand. This is something that has to be like, it's a consistent pattern, right? So they truly do not care if they hurt people. And that is sometimes shown in a pattern or a repeated behavior without recognizing or taking accountability, because they don't care. They don't actually even see the harm that they have done, because they're not able to see it because they lack that maturity. And this is even more so when somebody maybe doesn't have the ability to show remorse, but then suddenly they are full of it when they have consequences for their actions. That's always such a big red flag in terms of somebody's, I'm not gonna say like awareness for what they've done, but it kind of links back together with the accountability and whether or not somebody can be rehabilitated. Is, are they able to actually show emotional remorse and responses to others before people are watching? If somebody's only able to recognize that once the tables have turned, once the consequences of their actions have been exposed and people are finally seeking that vindication or that retribution, if you will, that is not somebody that is showing any sign of actual genuine feelings of remorse, feelings of genuine empathy for you. They have empathy for themselves. They have empathy for the fact that they've now been caught and their consequences are being blasted everywhere. They have to do damage control so they can save themselves. At the end of the day, these are the people that have themselves at the center of the universe, and they don't care about anybody else along the way. If they have to do it to save themselves, they will. They don't give a fuck about you. And they're really good at making you think that they do, until a situation like this will happen. And you have to be very aware of your surroundings, because they are even better at that than you could be. So I will be honest, this sort of lack of empathy, lack of ability to be remorseful of others, etc., is linked with a lot of discussions of psychopathy. You know, you're not supposed to diagnose somebody as a psychopath really anymore. They say it's like a very, very, very small percentage of people, but some people are truly psychopathic, sociopaths, whatever. And it's interesting to me because those are definitely, when you look back in time, for example, Ted Bundy is such a good example, because he was somebody that, when the need to save himself became the center of his focus, the way that that man was able to turn on the charm and flip the script on you. And that is a very, very, very dangerous person to be around, and a very big indicator of somebody that they'll never change. They don't want to change because to them, they don't see why they need to. But anyway, those sort of diagnoses and any sort of indicator that somebody could be in that sort of category, even if it's just a couple of factors, those are also big indicators of somebody that can never be rehabilitated. Never. And again, it's because it is who they are, right? It is in their DNA. It is ingrained in their fingertips. It is literally from their head to their toes. It's never going to go away. It's like that saying, when somebody shows you who they are, fucking believe them, especially when it's like, they can't change. They can't change themselves unless they're going to switch bodies with somebody. But I don't think we're that far along. I feel like we're going backwards as a society, not forwards. Anyway, I digress. Let's move on to the next factor. Patterns. Patterned behavior. Patterned behavior. I feel like this is obvious. If you are engaged in a criminal act that is situational, it was a one-time, two-time thing, cool, justifiable. You can take the steps to be rehabilitated. But if you are somebody that has consistently over a period of time shown that you act in a way, and regardless of anything else that's happened, you have not stopped, that pattern shows that it is not so situational or environmental. It is you. It is unchangeable. It is literally who you are. And something that's also really important with this sort of consideration is the possibility of escalating. So in the circumstance that, in my brain anyway, I'm not going to talk about like the specifics on here, but I think if you know, you know. If you have a situation where somebody is showing a pattern, right? And then all of a sudden the pattern begins to escalate. The timeline becomes faster. Normally that is because this person has been caught. They have been had. And a normal person would recognize that they are now in the spotlight. I probably should chill the fuck out. This type of person, the pattern behavior is so implemented in their being, in their soul, blood cells, DNA, all the things, that they don't give a shit. They are still escalating despite the consequences, despite the possibility of serious ramifications. And then honestly, at the end of it, they're going to look at you and be like, oh my God, are these the consequences of my own actions? They're going to literally act like they did nothing wrong and that you've done something wrong to them. Like, no, baby girl, the doors, like the tunnel's getting smaller and you're just going faster to get through it. When a normal person would just go the other way. I don't know what that fucking analogy was, but it made sense in my brain before it came out. So yeah, pattern behavior, I feel like that's pretty obvious, but that's obviously a very big indicator that it's just who you are. It's ingrained in you and you're not gonna change. So yeah, you probably won't be rehabilitated if you continue to act that way. Next factor. So yeah, these people, they have no emotional reaction when they harm others. They truly just cannot fathom how they've hurt other people or how they are expected to see that. So that's actually a massive red flag that I've seen quite a bit. The other one is they only are able to see remorse or be remorseful when the consequences have now affected them. Classic telltale sign. If somebody is only willing to say they're sorry or to recognize and act as if they give a shit about you, and the only reason they've done that is because now they've been caught, baby girl, that is quite the opposite of what we're looking for here. That is not rehabilitation. That is literally, that is the definition anyway, I'm not going to self-diagnose you guys on the internet from a distance because that's not appropriate. I'm also not a doctor. I'm also not I'm not trying to do that. So I'm really just saying that if you don't give a shit about me until you see the consequences of your own actions, then okay, we're only going to go through a couple more of these because now I'm feeling like a school teacher and I don't really like that. So, one of the other factors is, let's see, hold on, I'm looking at my notes here because I did make an outline because this is how much this really bothered me last night while I was laying in bed with insomnia. Okay, high impulsivity and low self-regulation. This occurs a lot when somebody has an undiagnosed mental health condition. I'm just gonna be honest about it. They act without regard for others. They act without regard or consideration for the consequences of their actions. They repeat harmful behavior even though they know that it's harmful. This is very indicative of somebody that is not of age as an adult. So I did a couple of juvenile resentencings back in just 10 years ago. The Miller versus Graham cases were passed in the United States Supreme Court, and then the state of Florida implemented those as well, which basically said if you are a juvenile, when you are convicted, you are not allowed to be sentenced to life unless you have an individualized sentencing hearing. And what that meant was they wanted to understand who you were. They wanted to understand the person that was before, the person now, etc. So my boss at the time said, Rachel, this will be a great learning experience for you. These are not going to be a big deal. This is not going to be that hard for you to, it's just a sentencing hearing. Absolutely the fuck it was not. I learned more on those two cases that I did pro bono. I went to a CLE, which is a continued legal education class, for 3 days, 3 full days of learning of the way that I had to look at these cases because they say that these are synonymous with a death penalty case because you are sentencing a juvenile to death in prison. So having that sort of understanding, this is what their brains look like. So people under the age of 18, their brain has not fully developed. So this kind of a person I'm referring to as somebody that has tried to seek out these treatment plans or therapy. Therapy, I feel like, is the number one thing that people will think about because you are getting the help of a medical or mental professional and they are hoping to diagnose you, sort out who you are and figure out the what, the why, what do we need to fix? What do we need to work on? And that's normally in the form of talk therapy. It is a very, very useful and powerful tool. It's something that I'm a very big advocate for. And I'm not suggesting that somebody that goes to therapy and fails once cannot be rehabilitated. That's not the suggestion. I have been to therapists that I did not get along with and I had to change therapists. But I didn't really fail because I chose to just move to another option. That's not a failure. That's just a little bit of a pivot, if you will. People who have chosen to be disingenuous or have chosen to go to therapy without the real intentions of doing better, those are the people that have a bigger indicator that they can't be rehabilitated because they don't actually want the help. And the reason that this is a big indicator of that is that they show that they cannot have any meaningful change in their lives because they don't want that meaningful change. And that's really the underlying kind of theme that you'll see in a lot of these factors is These are people that don't have the ability or have chosen that they don't want to do that. Kind of piggybacking off of this, the manipulation of these types of treatment programs. So this is really interesting to me because I have personally witnessed a situation where somebody not only had become so aware of how the system worked that they were able to manipulate it and use it to their advantage, but they also were able to manipulate others around them because they knew exactly what they were looking for. So for example, if somebody's going to be arguing that they are insane at a trial, you have to be evaluated by a psychiatrist and you have to have an expert come in and testify, etc. I've seen so many clients that have thought that they were insane and fail miserably. Same with like a polygraph test, right? Because if you have the ability to manipulate that sort of a system, that sort of a test, and you are successful, that means that you have the ability to manipulate others. And that is absolutely somebody that will never have the mindset to change or move forward in a better way because they have the control and it's all about control with them. These are the people that use like the insight that they learn as further tools to manipulate you. So the more information that they gather, the more they will use that to their advantage and your disadvantage. Just because you appear rehabilitated, you appear treated, you appear healed, does not mean that you are. If you're faking it, it's not fake it till you make it, baby girl. You're not ever gonna make it. You're failing. You are not rehabilitated. You are not treated. You are not healed. You're nothing. You are the same manipulative human that won't be rehabilitated ever. But there's one final factor that I think is extremely important because of this person, the reason why, my inspiration, right? And this is the factor of environmental reinforcement. Even if somebody wanted to, even if somebody could change, they often will not. Even if somebody could change, even if they wanted to, even if it was literally the last thing that they needed on this earth to move forward and be themselves, they often will not. If their social circle rewards their behavior, if their environment normalizes their behavior, if anybody applauds their behavior or excuses their behavior. And honestly, the biggest one is if there is no real incentives for them to change. So let me just break this down to you. I just did a video the other day about the Haley Beck case. If you don't know what that is, I'm sorry, you're not chronically online like me, but there was a 28-year-old teacher who was allegedly in a relationship with a student. Not only has all the evidence in this case been released to the public, right? I get it, public records requests, whatever, but it's fucking weird. People have all these opinions about it, and guess what? No one's been arrested. And I fear that nobody will be arrested because, candidly, this isn't an interference with the investigation. It kind of hurts the actual integrity of the case altogether. And the same thing has happened with another situation where it has been over a year now of an investigation being ongoing, and yes, they take time. But at the same time, it is very clear as of right now that there have been no consequences for actions. The incentive to change would probably be, I don't want to go to prison, but that incentive to change is not really, it hasn't appeared. And I fear that it's not going to appear because of all the stupid idiots on the internet that have thought they are the goddamn law enforcement themselves, and they have just hacked up what could have otherwise been a slam dunkable case. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I truly, Heavenly Father, I hope I'm wrong. Please forgive me for even saying that. Anyway, amen. But that's the reality, is that if you are following somebody, like let's say that Haley Beck was online. Let's say she was on TikTok and she had people in her comments supporting her behavior. Why would she want to change? You might, like, there could be 51% of the population that thinks what she did is bad. But if she's got a couple of people on her side, she's like, see, not everybody thinks I'm bad, so I must not be bad. Let's use a different example. Imagine even how much more influential it would be if you at one point in time told somebody that you thought that they were a piece of shit criminal, and now you flipped the script. Now you flipped sides. That is even more reinforcement because you took a negative and turned it into a fucking positive. You turn it into a positive. It's crazy. Rehabilitation is not just an internal battle with yourself. It is contextual. It is circumstantial. It is environmental. It is all these things combined into one, and they will create either the perfect storm or the perfect opportunity. Sorry, just like the soapbox I just got off of. I need to fall off of it really quickly. Anyway, I digress. So listen, there's a couple of things. Obviously, let's sum this the fuck up. I'm tired. I have to go work, okay? If somebody has not shown any change, can they change? Of course, right? But there are things that have to be present. Like they have to have the motivation. They have to have the insight. They have to have the environment. They have to have the timing. They have to have the perfect lineup of things to make this possible, especially if they have been unsuccessful in the past. Especially depending on how long they've also been engaged in this behavior is also another factor. So fast forward to this is me bringing this all back full circle. Okay. The person that I was suggesting can never be rehabilitated, in light of these factors, I now stand so fucking firmly on that belief. Because every single factor that I've discussed, like, talk about you are an A+ student. You are an A+ student on never being able to be rehabilitated. And again, we never know what's going on in someone's home right now in this very moment. I have no fucking clue, nor do I give a shit. But what I do know is what I've seen. And the patterns, the behaviors, the excuses, the lack of any accountability. If I ever saw that, that could be like a starting point. And you would still have to prove, you have to get over a motherfucking mountain to prove to me. But yeah, I'm going to stand on my belief originally that this person and certain people cannot be rehabilitated. And that is just the reality of the world that we live in. Some people are not meant to be good people. That is why we have prison systems. That's why we have the criminal justice system. And it's sad that some people who are actually criminals, who are actually admitted criminals, are out here on the streets when we have people that are innocent in prison that have been rehabilitated. Because if it was up to me, I would just make y'all switch fucking places. If I could just give me I need a genie, I need a little lamp, I need to make 3 wishes. I will wish for the switching of 3 people. I already know them right now. Right now. 1 woman, 2 men. No, lies. Oh my God, my bad. Sorry. 2 women, 1 man. Wow. We thought 1 was a man at one point, so that's why I got mixed up. Anyway, yeah, and that my catfish can't be rehabilitated either. The signs are there, guys. The signs are there. Anyway, this is exhausting. No wonder people do this as their job, because what the fuck? Anyway, I have no idea if this is insightful. I feel like this is kind of insightful. Or was this boring? I don't know. But we're starting here. I want everybody to be rehabilitated. I love a good redemption story, honestly. Truly, it's why I do what I do. But some of my clients have proven that they are not worthy, and that is just another example as to why I am more qualified than other people to talk about this. And just because you see somebody on the internet that you don't fucking know from another state, the keyword there is you don't know. You don't know them. Your parasocial weirdo bullshit. My last thing I want to say is I think that people need to start taking the advice of those that actually know people in real life, because there's a very big difference between somebody online and somebody in real life. Not everybody's willing to show their ass like I am. I don't give a fuck. I've already been so thrown down the stairs at this point that you can't hurt me. Well, you can, but I'm going to try not to let you. But those of you that think that you know others that you've never actually physically set eyes on or held, given a hug to, I was going to say held their hand, but that's weird. Yeah, you guys can go fuck off. You can go kick rocks barefoot. I hope your pillow is extremely warm and gross. So, anyway. If there's other things you guys want to know about, let me know. And I'm not going to edit this. When you hear these little fumbles, I'm not editing shit. I don't have time for that. So, I guess I need to find me a management company so they can help me. Maybe one day. But y'all know me, I don't really care that much. Anyway, love you guys. If you have somebody out there that you think could prove me wrong, please let me know. If you know who I'm talking about, let me know if you disagree. I would love the debate. I love it. And I love you. Kisses.